Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and I'm continuing a walk that I started in a previous video. I'll put a link to it, where I have climbed up Graffham Hill onto Graffham Down. This is Graffham Down, and the other side of this, I'm on the South Downs, on the South Downs Way, I should also add. And if you didn't see the other video, that will make more sense if you see that beforehand. Down here, I mean, you can't really see it from behind me, but there is a great drop, 600 feet down to the village below of Graffham and Bar Lavington, and then Petworth to the north and Midhurst that way. And I'm walking on the South Downs Way, which, for those that don't know, is a 100-mile route from Winchester to Eastbourne along basically the ridge of the South Downs. And it's a very popular route. A lot of people do it, and quite a lot of it has changed in the last 80 years. Prehistoric man perhaps was walking through a lot more trees. Neolithic man started to clear the trees and started to, instead of hunting and gathering their food, they set up farms. And that went on for a few thousand years. The Iron Age, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age happened. Hill forts, tumuli were constructed, enclosures, earthworks and all that sort of stuff. And the South Downs is a fantastic depository of Neolithic, Iron Age, Bronze Age, early man. The remnants can be found. Although 80 years ago, a very huge amount have been destroyed and ploughed over. Before that, in the 19th and 18th and 19th centuries, they were plundered and the goods removed, and you'll often see a tumuli in a round shape like this, but with a dip in it, where the early grave diggers, the antiquarian diggers I should say, dug in the top and searched for a skeleton and any grave goods, and then filled it in. But of course, over time, there was subsidence and it wasn't compacted in the way that it was originally built, and of course there's a dimple in the top, and that's a very classic sign, especially on the downs when you're walking along over exposed downs, not downs that have crops on it, but exposed downs, and you'll see sometimes very, very faint little circle of a ridge with a dimple in it, and the chances are that is a tumuli or tumuli. People have different ways of pronouncing it. I prefer tumuli, but a lot of people say tumuli because I suppose it sounds like tombs, and they are ancient burial mounds. Here we're coming up to a sign just to confirm that we are in fact on the South Downs. There's a field here. If you watched my previous video, you'll know a little bit about the history of this field. There's a public footpath that bisects it here, and I'm going to go down this. It's a very narrow footpath, but the great thing about this is if we look to the west, we get a sense of how big this field is. If we look to the east, we get an even more sense of how vast this field is. 40 years ago, this was not a prairie of barley, not a monoculture of one crop, but a diverse landscape with trees, wildflowers, insects, butterflies, birds, mammals, stoats, weasels, all those sort of things. A real gem of the Downs. There's sections of the Downs round here where forestation has happened and a lot of pine forests have come in, and they've also improved the land apparently for growing stuff like wood or timber. This is improving the land so it can grow barley. In my previous video I explained how this came about. A Dutch farmer decided to plough up all of this beautiful open countryside that was gallops, that was free for people to use and enjoy and come for picnics, that served the village below. They could come up here on this wonderful place, and probably had for generations. And due to the mechanism of the government and how to complain, how to prevent the landscape being repurposed, shall I say. I nearly said destroyed, but it's not destroyed, but it is repurposed, though the wildlife is completely destroyed and gone. We'll come to the other side. Here's another track, which must be a nuisance for the farmer, because they crisscross his land as they would have done in the old days, and he couldn't get rid of the rights of way. Quite right so. This repurposing of the land was going on all the time. Since the Second World War, the need for buying food was the thought that we needed to plough up all this ancient land and grow more food. And I don't know if people of a certain age will remember the butter mountains and the milk lakes of the 70s and 80s, where the EEC, what later became the European Union, was encouraging farmers to keep farming, keep investing, for fear that there might be, a drought or what have you, that we wouldn't have enough food to feed everybody, and actually we ended up with a glut. And as a consequence of this encouragement, more land was being thought as speculative, and so our landscape, our heritage, was churned up for farming. I'm not having a go at farmers, because we do need to eat and we need our food grown, but we do need it grown sensibly, effectively. But part of that whole process, look how far it goes back. I mean, it just goes for miles. Part of that process is wildlife is part of it. You need the pollinators. It's not good for the land to just keep putting fertilizers down and pesticides down and having a monoculture. It's not good for the planet, but it's also not good for us humans. And I think this is, so I'm not picking on the current farmer here. It's not his fault. Whoever bought the land or inherited the land, the deed had been done, and it was pointless once it's been done to try and put it back, because it would take generations and generations. So, now it's a fait accompli. It has to be what it is. But I'm learning in this book by Marion Showard, The Theft of Our Countryside, what damage has been done, and I'm very keen to learn what we're doing to repair the damage, and how new farming techniques are improving our wildlife and diversity of plants. Because if we don't keep them, and if we don't look after them, we will lose them, and this planet and our country and our walks in the country will be a lot poorer. And one of the purposes of this walk is to show you that I'm just on public footpaths. I'm not trespassing, I'm on public footpaths. This is the South Downs Way coming back up to, here's the sign in the distance, we'll rejoin it. A lot of the South Downs Way that once was beautiful downland springy earth with wildflowers and birds and mammals and so much joy to see, now unfortunately is walking through prairies as if you were in some American landscape. And for me, the fear is that the landscape of England, or the UK, United Kingdom if you prefer, is changing beyond all recognition. When a younger generation come out and see this, they may say, oh, this looks lovely, it's all green. But it's a uniform green. It's one green. It's not the diverse green that it was. It's not the lush different colours, the textures, the wildlife, the butterfly. I mean, there's no butterflies, there's no birds, there's nothing. This wedge, a mile and a bit long, on the top of this wonderful stretch of downs that once was something special, is now devoid of anything. And of course, you know, the farmers are going to discourage anything like that. They just want the crop to be what it is. And our walks are turning into walks on very defined paths adjacent to monoculture. And that is greatly regrettable. Anyway, my rant is over. I'm going to be looking at this over the next few weeks on and off. I want to be aware of what we have done to the land and the landscape. That's what my channel does. I hope you will join me in more of these investigations. If you've enjoyed it, do give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I'd be interested in your point of view. If you remember the old meadows, hay meadows with all the different insects and flowers and plants and things, if you have a point about that, it'd be lovely to hear it. Anyway, don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, and I will catch up with you on the next one. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye bye.